Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of a 280 Group Executive Series webinar. My name is Roger Snyder, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at 280 Group. Thank you so much for joining us. I would say this morning, but depending on where you are in the world, it could be afternoon or even evening. Today, we are continuing our series about digital product management, and today is part 3, talking about product-led growth. And I'm joined today by Susanna Axelrod and David Nash. They're lovely faces. They are both based in the Portland area. I am based in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so actually, if you know that, then you know that I'm actually close to having to evacuate, unfortunately, due to fires. But I'm excited to be here with you virtually, live from my home here in Santa Cruz Mountains. David and Susanna, how are you folks doing this morning?
I think we're probably doing better than you today, Roger. My goodness, is there a chance that you're gonna have to run out in the middle of the webinar?
Not in the middle. Not in the middle, but we may have to evacuate this afternoon. So we roll with the punches, right?
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's, best of luck. We're all pulling for you and for California today. We're watching what's happening up here at Oregon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Here in Portland, it's a beautiful blue sky day. We love our summers, and so I'm just going to let this one sink in and last a while. Not quite 70 degrees yet. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah. No, this part of the year becomes a little bittersweet because August, the days start getting a little shorter and you're looking at the end,
Yep,
but
absolutely.
we're hanging on.
Well, let's introduce our audience to your backgrounds and expertise. I'll say a little bit about each of you. So Susanna has held product management and strategy roles for more than 25 years. She started her career as a consultant working with tech companies and VCs in the thriving startup community in Israel. Wow, I didn't even know that. Susanna later held product marketing roles at Intel, launched a new product at Intuit, and led product teams at Sage, Thomson Reuters, Verizon, and open source startups in the developer tools space. She's an award-winning speaker, leader, and mentor with community organizations including Portland Product Camp, PDX Women in Tech, and the Portland chapter of Women in Product. So welcome, Susanna. Thank you for bringing your expertise to our audience today.
Thanks, Roger.
And David Nash is a recognized expert in product management, product marketing, entrepreneurship, and team development. He's delivered generations of successful technology products, such hardware in various fields, hardware, software, SaaS, systems, and services, and is an expert in B2B SaaS pricing, user experience, and in-app user engagement. My favorite part of your little bio is coming up. David has repeatedly built PM best practices and high-performing teams. He's also recognized as a community builder, coach, and my favorite part, bar raiser, and is the founder of Product Camp Portland, held annually since 2012. So welcome, David. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roger. Susanna is somebody it sounds like I really want to work with, so I'm glad I get to every day.
Awesome.
Yeah, me too.
As you mentioned, both of us, we are passionate about this stuff. And just a quick note, as Roger mentioned, we did a couple of these webinars already. It's a continuing series. And this content and this curriculum really speaks to us. So we're psyched to be back with you today for number 3 in a series. And we'll tell you how it fits in just a couple of minutes.
Excellent. Yes, we will. So let's move on, do a couple housekeeping items first. All right. After this webinar, I would love for you all to stay engaged with our product management community. Now more than ever these days, especially, it's useful to get connected with your peers by joining our LinkedIn leadership group. Join others and use it as a forum for getting together in these challenging times. And in the chat box, I am going to paste a link to the LinkedIn so that you can easily join our group and become a participant, not just a listener, hopefully, but also a contributor as well. All right.
Lots of great conversations in there, for sure.
Let's keep going to the housekeeping items. So we love interacting with our fans. And so during this webinar, we encourage you to ask questions or give feedback. So please use the questions box and ask your questions, and that we'll have time at the end in order to be able to answer your questions as many as we possibly can. So please put questions in that questions box, and we'll leave time for that at the end of this. Now, our most popular questions. Can I watch this webinar later? Yep, the answer is yes. So we will send a follow-up email after this webinar, and it includes a link that will allow you to view the webinar recording after it has ended. Let's see. Let's move on, yeah. Before I hand the webinar over to Susanna and David, I'll take a minute and introduce a little bit about 280 Group, right? We empower product managers and product marketers with the knowledge and tools to build products that matter to you, products that matter to your customers, products that matter, hopefully, to your company and the world. Keep going. If you need help improving your product management and product marketing skills or your team skills, we offer a variety of different services, and I'm not going to read all of these to you, but check us out at 280group.com, and you can see how we can help you expand your career or help you build up your product management team or discipline. Now, recently we announced a new live course, Digital Product Management. This course focuses on the key skills and tools needed by product managers to quickly and iteratively, I always have a hard time with that word, discover, design, deliver, and grow. Yes, definitely, right? But it's all about being able to discover, design, deliver, and grow digital products with confidence, ensuring your customers are delighted and your business goals are achieved. I'm going to paste a link into the chat box in a moment where you can learn more about our digital product management course. And we have a little teaser today. At the end of this webinar, we're going to provide you with a special discount code so you can sign up for the course with a discount. And we'll tell you how much the discount it is and what the code is when we get to the end of the webinar. Now, I mentioned before, this webinar is part of a series, right? The Product Management Leadership Series. It's also part of a 3-part series. We'll go into more detail about that. If you'd animate, please. We did talk about this being an implications of change webinar, because product-led growth is a newer idea, and it is a change that's coming to a lot of companies or has already happened to a lot of companies. And I'll let our experts tell you more about that in a moment. But that's what we're talking about today, is implications of change. A little bit about our audience, David and Susanna. So we have got nearly 50% of product managers or product marketers in attendance this morning, and over 20% of product management leadership as well. So in this particular webinar, it's really going to work well for both of these audiences, because as a product manager, we're going to give you ideas of how can you inject product-led growth into your product. As a leader of product management, you can be thinking about, how do I bring this to the larger organization? How do I support my PMs in this and help move the whole organization forward in this? Because there's some pretty interesting and exciting ideas that require some change management, require a little bit of working across different departments and teams to make this come true. So I think our audience is the right audience for this today.
I think so too. You know, we draw a lot of diverse roles to our webinar series and to our classes. And I wonder what that other is. That's a big chunk of purple there. So we'd love to hear from you guys, whether you're an other or in one of the other named categories, you know, during the course of the webinar.
All right, and I'm done now. Let's turn it over to our experts, David and Susanna. Oh, and I'll let you even talk about this part, David.
All right, well, just quickly, and then I'll turn over to Susanna. This is third in a series, as I mentioned. We visited with you in May and June for parts 1 and 2, respectively. This is part 3. There will be more coming. And what Roger mentioned early on is really the backbone for this series. It's an entirely new curriculum we built over the course of the last few months, and we just launched, called Digital Product Management. This is the curriculum that I always wish I had when I was leading product teams. This is the curriculum I wish I could have sent my teams to over the years. And like the 2 topics before you here, and again, if you didn't join us, if you weren't able to join us prior, please do watch the recordings because they're pretty cool. We're going to draw from that curriculum again today and give you a taste of what we cover in the class. Product-led growth is a huge topic. We only have, well, now less than an hour to talk about it today, so we'll go into it. But if you really want to deep dive on this, it's a great curriculum. And as Roger said, we have a very special offer for you at the end of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Susanna, to kick us off, maybe with a thought-provoking couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. Okay, well, we are going to kick things off. Yes, there we go, with a poll. Now, David and I had a bunch of discussion around this poll because we'd originally asked are you doing product-led growth? Are you using these methods? And then I came back and I said, well, wait a minute, what if they can't answer that? That's a pretty hard question to answer unless you're pretty deep into the material. So we built the poll out, and now I see we have a lot of different answers. So hopefully, David, this is a multi-choice, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, these are all best practices. We'll talk about them a lot during this session, but they're all different things that you may or may not be doing with your product. And they're kind of best practices and indicators that what you're doing is product-led growth. So,
Susanna, do any of these jump out at you as particularly really interesting ones, or really different ones than non-product led growth kinds of practices?
yeah. And so are we launching this as a poll, or are we
This
just
is not a
talking?
poll. This is just kind of, GoToWebinar does not do well.
Okay.
Does not do well with poll
Okay.
questions. So many choices.
All right. I'm like, launch the poll already, David. So, okay. Well, let's see. Does anything jump out at me? I mean, I think that notion of product qualified leads is a really important one. That's a new thing for our sales teams, certainly, and marketing teams to wrap our minds around, right? As you know, it's not your usual marketing lead. It's not somebody somebody downloaded a white paper from your website, somebody viewed a demo. It's that this PQL is someone who's actually using your product. So I think that's a sense of a different kind of lead and a higher quality lead. So that to me is pretty interesting. Honestly, I could go on about all these, but I think we've got about 49 minutes right now to do that. So,
For our attendees, I would just encourage you to do a screenshot. These are great questions to ask yourself. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to share an assessment tool, which will allow you to kind of benchmark yourself on these and other areas as well to see kind of how PLG savvy you are. But good thing to look in the mirror, so to speak, right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'd say each one of those has value. So, there we go. Thank you. So, yes, you're my slide pilot for today. So, David, I have a quiz for you. So on this slide, and that's, look at all these companies and these logos on the left of the slide, and tell me what your answer is. We've got A through E. So A is the answer of what do these have in common? Is it that I use them all?
Sure.
Is it they are sending me constant notifications and I'm really overwhelmed? Do you think that could be an answer, right? And actually, I've got my phone off because that is actually true. They are all very successful SaaS companies. So that's C. D is they're product-led companies. Or is your answer, David, E, that is all of the above? What do you think?
Well, with the possible exception of GitHub that I haven't used in a long time, I would definitely say E, nearly all E. And the notifications are manageable. And as we'll get into, that's one of the hallmarks of being product-led. So these are great companies. I'll bet many of our attendees use at least a couple of these every day.
Yes, exactly. So, and you got it right. So ding, ding, ding. Yes, all of the above. The B is obviously tongue in cheek about the notifications, but these are, if not household names, they're certainly, is there a word for that? Like company hold names or business hold names that if we're not using them, we've heard of them, we've got, we own their stock, whatever the situation is, they're very, very popular, big time SaaS companies, and they're all product led. That's the big thing they have in common. So you might be asking me about now, what does that mean? What is a product led company? And if you're not asking me, then I'm going to answer it anyway. So, hold on a minute. Okay, so first and foremost, a company is product led when it relies on product usage and user experience to grow. And so by growth, we mean all different types of growth, right? That's customer acquisition in the first place. That includes retention and also expanding your customer base. So you see how this diagram here has product at the center. So I just told you about how a company grows, but how it's structured and what its focus is also really important. So in a product-led company, many of the functions that we typically think about as working in separate silos are really combining to make users successful with the product. So it's not sales over here, marketing over here, design and engineering over here. We're really always thinking about how to rally around and use the product as that primary engine of growth. And for a lot of us, right, we're in sales-led companies. We come out of long-time successes in sales-led companies, right? And so it's not easy, right? This isn't like an overnight transition that we make. And it's something that some of the startups, like the companies we looked at on the last slide, a lot of them really had that baked into their DNA from the very start. But we're going to show you today why it's worth at least considering. Remember all of those best practices that we had a couple of slides ago. It's worth definitely either considering adopting some of those or even trying to go full bore on this notion of changing how we grow as companies and changing how we're structured. Okay, so let's talk about the reasons. Why would you want to be product-led in the first place? Well, there are about 200 billion good reasons here that you can see, and these are, this is the cumulative market cap of all of these companies that are in this PLG. It's called the PLG index, and it is something that a company called OpenView Partners. They're a Boston-based venture capital firm who we owe a huge debt to OpenView Partners. They not only invest pretty exclusively in product-led companies that have this business model, but they also do a lot of research and a lot of writing. So the stats that we see, the reason why we know and we were able to track that these companies are so successful is largely because of OpenView's actually, collecting the data for us and writing about it. So we know that their index of these companies that have gone public over the past few years shows that they've got that really, really significant cumulative market cap and that they're really outperforming other kinds of companies. And you might say, well, they're tech companies, so they're going to do better than the broad index lately. That's just the sector that's doing well. Well, and this is a year old, so this could be pretty significantly more as of 2020. But even compared to your average SaaS company, which is that dark blue line in the middle. And so what are some of the other reasons beyond just your stock price and performance? So if you are, and these are all obviously contributing factors to profitability, but product-led companies are able to reduce it. So you've all heard of the KPI called CAC, right? That's commonly called CAC. That's an abbreviation for customer acquisition cost. And that's all the costs of all the marketing activities that you're doing, the sales activities. Now, CAC is proven to be lower for companies that have a freemium model, and a freemium model offering something for free to users. That's a hallmark of product-led companies. And it turns out that while it probably doesn't surprise you, David and Roger, to know that customer acquisition cost has really increased a lot over the years, right? We've got a lot more messaging, a lot more companies are having to do more advertising and spend more to reach out to new customers. But freemium companies, their acquisition cost has grown significantly less. So these kinds of product-led companies are actually spending about 30% less over the past 4 years on their acquisition costs. And some of that is because lead quality is better. So remember, we picked out the product qualified leads on that slide. So imagine for a minute you're a salesperson and you can either walk into a company where they don't know your product at all, nobody's using it, no one's recommending it, and you have to do all the education and talk to the buyers and convince them of the merits of your product. And compare that to a company where you walk in and guess what? 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees are already using a stripped down version of your product. They're already solving their problems with your product, right? And you're able to sell them something on top, right? You can walk in and say, hey, everyone's using Slack at your company. We're going to sell you the visibility and the security that you need at the enterprise level. So you're really improving that hit rate and that lead quality. And you don't need an army of salespeople pursuing those smaller deals, which can be pretty expensive. If you enable customers to self-service and to purchase smaller deals through the website, you can really focus on bigger deals. Also, another data point is how buyers, even in B2B, a lot of them are saying nowadays that they prefer, actually Forrester says about 3/4 of them prefer to self-educate. So they want to find out all about your product. They may even want to try it out beforehand, even at the management level. And so you're enabling them to buy the way they want. They go and do the research themselves, and then they make decisions based on your product. And then finally, when we're all focused on the success of the user, we're actually making users happier. And so I'm gonna ask you another quiz, David. So what happens when you make your users happy? What's a good outcome of that?
I'm guessing they buy more frequently.
Yep, they buy more frequently. No, yeah. But what else do they do?
They refer, they tell other people about
it. Thank you. They
tell other people. They bring their friends and family and coworkers.
Right, yeah. Right. So, you know, we can't, like, I feel like the word viral has taken on a really bad connotation these days. Yeah. Right. So, but that's really the right word for it, right? That if you really make your users happy, they're going to tell other users, and the best product-led companies are giving them mechanisms to do this also. It's whether it's encouraging referrals on social media or actually allowing them to invite other users, incentivizing them to invite other users. So this is a way that you're going to talk about the flywheel in a minute, but it's the way we make the flywheel spin, and it's the way we grow our company.
Exactly. So next, right. I would add just one quick thing to what's not on the graph. From the same OpenView data that Susanna showed you here. 3 things, really big headlines. This cohort of PLG-led companies also outperformed in revenue, higher revenue growth, higher gross margin. And because those companies are spending less on big, expensive sales and marketing campaigns, guess what? They're spending more of a percentage of revenue in R&D, which is a win all the way around. So thanks, Susanna.
Absolutely, yes. And thanks for adding that. So now, okay, so let's talk about growth for a minute. And we want to give you a little bit of history. And you can see that picture on the left. I don't know if we don't want to go 100 years back. That's a little, I was looking for a good picture of a salesperson, and I Googled, you know, just look for a free image on salespeople, and I got this guy, and I was like, I got to include him because, you know, he's the past for sure. So we're not quite going to, but we're not going to reach that far back. And we're going to talk about the funnel on the right instead. And when I say history, this is still something that's heavily used. So this is not ancient history here, looking at the sales funnel. We still talk about it a lot, but it's an important thing to talk about and to mention in order to contrast it with how product-led companies work. Now that marketing funnel, so for those of you who aren't super familiar with it, that sales funnel, or we might call it a marketing funnel, it's a way that sales and marketing interpret the buyer's journey. So if you think about what it means to become a customer for a product, the first thing, you're sort of minding your own business, and then what happens is you become aware of a solution. It kind of comes onto your radar, and then you might, you know, if you have a particular problem that solution addresses, you're going to become a little interested. You might want to find out more. You might pass along to like really considering the product. You know, you might want to look at specs or watch a demo, really truly understand the product. You're starting to think, wow, I'm actually really interested in this. This could be something for me. This could solve my problem or make my job easier. Intent is kind of that switching point where like I'm getting to that decision point. I think I'm going to buy this. And then of course, purchase is the last phase. Now, how marketing and sales looks at this is that marketing today is shepherding customers all the way through from that awareness to that getting that understanding of your product and of its benefits, how it could solve your problem. And then they're handing leads off to sales who kind of do that last mile. So they get customers down through intent and through that purchase process, understanding their budget, and they're, you know, negotiating with customers, getting them to buy. Now, why is it? So can you tell me, so David or Roger, can you tell me why is this actually pictured as a funnel though? Can you figure out why?
Well,
so
there's fallout. There's fallout at every level. And for every people at the top, maybe one customer or less will come through the bottom. And there's a lot of handoffs here as well.
Right. Yeah. There's that lonely guy at the bottom, right? And he's so excited because he's like, in the traditional companies, like, I made it and I really want to use the product now. Can I install it? Right. So he's never, like in a really traditional software company, that person at the bottom and their users, if they're a business buyer, they may never have even experienced or used the product. They may have seen a demo, but not. And notice there's another interesting thing about this, where all you see here is marketing, sales, and customers. Where's product management, right? Is product management here at all? Well, there, maybe like you might be we're sort of off screen, right? We're looking at copy, we're giving benefits. We're certainly working with these stakeholders for sure, but we and our teams don't become as important to this customer at the bottom. We're not focused and working with them until that purchase actually happens. And so this is the traditional model, and we show it to you really by way of contrasting. We're going to show you on the next slide how things really can work differently in product-led companies, where we go from the funnel to the flywheel. And there, David's going to take you through.
Thanks, Susanna. So let's take Thaddeus J. Schmidlap and put him back in your curio cabinet where he belongs. And let's start thinking about a very different way to look at the world. There's a couple of things you'll notice, besides the funnel is now turned into a flywheel, is that first off, we have a little different name for the types of phases about customer journey and user journey. We're no longer talking about a linear process. So that this funnel, this flywheel is all about continuous iteration versus the linear, pour enough customers or leads in the top and maybe a couple will pop out the bottom in the funnel. So the names and the types of phases we're talking about have really changed. Further, the behavioral changes, the transitions, the conversions, if you will, are very different now. So we're trying to get evaluators to become activated, and we'll discuss what that means in a minute. And as you go around, we want to take new users, make them regular users, turn them into champions and advocates. And so this constant iteration is really the thing that kind of the one slide, if you don't remember anything else but this, remember that this is really the primary difference, is that, as Susanna said, and now we can show graphically, the product, not teams of people and not sales and marketing campaigns, is really the fuel, the furnace that keeps firing to bring people to your product, keep them in your product, and bring other people back. So this is really huge. This graphic, by the way, we did not invent. This graphic was one of several that I really loved. This one comes from the product-led org, the product-led collective. So hats off to them. They're a consortium of several companies, some of whom make tools for this business. But this is it. This is the simplest way to really describe visually what product-led growth means. And there's nothing that's more contrast than the funnel you saw a minute ago. So when we talk about measuring, we immediately get into the area of metrics. And one of the things you may be familiar with, and if not, you will be now, is this notion of pirate metrics. So Johnny Depp here is here to tell us about something called R. I tried to do my best, talk like a pirate voice. R, or AARRR, are pirate metrics. Now we're mixing metaphors just a little bit from a flywheel to these metrics, but these metrics at the end of the day are how your sales, marketing, finance team, CFO, and CEO will manage a lot of the business outcomes. So you'll see as we go through the next couple of points that each of these are measurable. They're KPIs, key performance indicators, and these allow us to do all the things that Susanna asked me about a couple of minutes ago, which is not just using the product, but coming back, using it over again, telling my friends and family about it. So, and the last difference between funnel world and our flywheel, PLG world, is that, as Susanna said, we used to not be invited to the party in product, and now we're not only in the party, we really are expected to heavily influence and really lead this parade. And this is a great opportunity. This doesn't mean we're becoming sales and marketing people. What it means is we have a lot more of the growth engine really in our hands, and we don't throw things over the wall, for other organizations to do disconnected from the product. So it's really very, very different, exciting transformation.
Put your pirate gear on.
Put your pirate gear on, that's right. So we have a bunch of best practices. In the limited time we have, we're going to give you kind of a couple in each category, but they break into two major categories. The first are what kind of customer-facing things do PLG companies do? Kind of what does good look like? And I'll go through a couple of those, and then Susanna will close out with what are some of the internal competencies that we have to, just things that we have to be good at. So let's talk about the customer-facing things. By the way, again, we do a very deep dive on product-led growth in our digital product management course. If this is interesting, join us in that course, and we can really go deep on this. So first off, let's talk about activation. Activation is the first area, and activation is, again, an acquisition, by the way. If you look down at our pirate at the bottom, in terms of the pirate metrics, I'm grouping together, in the interest of time and simplicity, acquisition and activation. But this is all about, as Susanna said, customers finding you. How do they know you exist? So this starts nominally on your website. This is all about taking all the friction out of customers finding out more about your product. So rather than going through the old school funnel of awareness, interest, evaluation, this is, hey, I found out about your product, maybe from a search engine, maybe from a partner site. I want to check it out. And don't make me fill out too many forms. Don't make me call a salesperson. Take out the friction. I want it now. Get out of my way. The other thing we have to do here is really define what activated means. And for those of you who joined us at our June webinar where we spoke about user engagement, or our July one with onboarding, this is kind of a quick recap. Activation has to be defined in terms of the user can now do X, Y, or Z. A user has now received the value that they came to the product in search of, and every one of our onboarding programs, every one of our onboarding guides is deliberately directed to guide users from being kind of passive spectators to being activated active users. And as Susanna said, this notion of PQL, product qualified leads, is vital here, and this is brand new, never existed in the old sales and marketing funnel world. And PQL even is a whole topic in and of itself. If you look at a company like HubSpot, who's a tremendously successful company, HubSpot breaks PQL down into three types of leads. PQL, again, is someone who isn't just aware of your product, but has used it, maybe a free version. Are they using a free version? Are they using a paid version? Are they interested in, have they clicked on any upgrade notifications in the product? So you can get very sophisticated, and these PQL leads are a heck of a lot more valuable and much more likely to convert than just marketing qualified leads.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about activation, super important, and some of the pirate metrics that correlate to measuring it.
Yeah, those PQL leads are also more measurable, because if you're measuring activity in your product and you see a heavy user of your free version, then you can address those first.
Exactly right. When we talk about adoption, as we move on, now we want to take those newbie users and turn them into, regular users. So here we're talking about making sure their first experience in your product is awesome, right? If it's a free version or a paid version, make sure they are so delighted. They don't just get what they came for. Maybe they've got a couple of things they weren't even expecting in the product, things they weren't even smart enough or sophisticated enough to expect in the product. If you're going to charge them, don't charge them until they've gotten something awesome. That's really bad form. It's not a good look, right? To have your hand out and say, pay me now, and maybe you can get some good stuff later. But do what so many of the free trial and premium products do, which is deliver something cool, and then you can very unapologetically ask to get paid. It works a lot better. You also want to instrument your product, as we covered in our prior webinar. Make sure that you are monitoring, and you're not guessing what features drive value, what features drive upgrades, and make sure that when you go through your pricing and packaging, another thing we cover in detail in our digital product management curriculum, that your pricing has been tested, it's been validated, and it's sensible. and you're not ripping people off. They're going to want to throw money at you if they have a great experience in your product early on, and they don't want to give it up. So that's what adoption is all about. And by the way, this is where you monetize. And so our Pirates of the Caribbean at the bottom of the screen, this is all where revenue starts happening, because people are very happy to pay once you've delighted them.
Yeah,
as we move across.
David, there was even a comment actually in the questions. It was more of a comment than a question. The fact that it's crucial to demonstrate and provide that value before the paywall. And this same person has a great question, which I look forward to getting to later on, but keep going.
Absolutely. And so all of you who get New York Times and Washington Post things in your Facebook feed, and you all want to click on that story, and you get a couple of freebies every month, they've converted a lot of people. I know I've been a New York Times digital customer for many years, but it started off with reading stuff and then saying, well, I want more of this and I don't want the paywall, but I was very happy to subscribe at that point. So let's turn our customers who adopt our product into customers who adore our product. And the way you do that is really pretty straightforward. You give them the opportunity in the product to tell you what's working well, what's not working well. So if customers need support, help them find support with an online knowledge base without having to go call your support team or go enter another form and get in a queue. You can offer feedback. Again, we covered this in our last seminar around, webinar around user engagement and onboarding. Ask users about the feature they just used. Is it working? Could it be better? What do they like? What do they dislike? That's the place to do it, in situ, in context. Make sure as you're collecting all that data that you, your executive team, your product team, your marketing team, whoever's deciding what goes into the product, is using that in-product data. So if you're not measuring it, you're still making way too many decisions based on opinion. So measure it in the product. That should inform all your decisions. And again, to our bottom point here, for those of you who are students of whole product, you'll know that whole product is the place where your full customer experience lives. So that's a place where not just your product, but your support function, your marketing functions, your community, all that stuff has to shine here. We have actually done a lot of work on whole product, and we've blogged about it considerably. And Roger, if you would kindly drop that blog link in the chat window.
Yep.
Whole product is another very, very cool topic. It's essential with digital products, and it's essential for product-led companies.
Absolutely. So read
and
more.
Retention, by the way, retention here is the key performance indicator that you'll be able to correlate with this behavioral improvement.
Yes, very good point.
Last but not least is we want to turn our regular users who would do our product into champions who will advocate for it. So this is where referral comes in. This is not just coming back, this is bringing your friends. And here are some great best practices. Number one, if I like my product, if I like your product rather, I should be able to invite another user to it, particularly if they're at the same company. So how cool is that if I could send a note to Susanna and say, this is the coolest thing, click on this link, you can use this product now. Mm-hmm. She didn't have to go through a third party. She got that from somebody she knows and ostensibly trusts. So in-product user activation, huge best practice. Connecting your product with other mission-critical products is also absolute table stakes. Look at what a great job Slack does, right? So Slack connects to Outlook, Slack connects to Zoom, Slack connects to Mural, many other tools. And Slack watches when you're connecting to these tools, and it makes those integrations pop up. You don't have to go off to a third-party place. All the friction out of connecting your app with other apps that your customers are likely to use. And that results in a really strong online community. If you can let your users and your delighted users not just invite users, but you make it easy for them to write good stuff about you and put those positive reviews out there, you're going to build a thriving, growing, and dare I say, viral community of users. So that was a quick walkthrough through these four things, but you can see in each one of these categories, there are some very specific tactical things you can do and you should be doing. I think it's time for another poll.
It is.
I think so.
It's time for a poll where we are going to ask to get a little feedback now. So let me launch the poll, and then David, you can kind of read the text of the poll to them.
I will. So we've given you a little glimpse at some customer-facing actions. Again, Susanna's about to go through some of the internal essential competencies. But even right now, we'd love to know whether you think this is a capability that looks promising. If you have specific 1 or 2 things you could do tomorrow, maybe even today, or you haven't really been inspired yet. Let us know how you're thinking.
So the poll information is coming in, and I'm going to leave it open for a few more seconds to let people vote. But I'm actually encouraged by these numbers. I was kind of expecting it might be a little more middle of the road, but so far we're getting a pretty positive feeling about this. I think people are excited about the opportunity here to incorporate product-led growth into their product. I'm going to hold on another 10 seconds.
I was too. Some of the stuff is really low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
It's true. We think a lot about you got to be a consumer SaaS, a startup to adopt any of this. And that's actually not true. There's a lot that we can do to move the needle.
And in fact, there's a question about that later. So I'll let you know now that somebody wants to talk about how PLG isn't specific.
Good.
Right. So be prepared for that question when we get to Q&A. But let me close the poll. I want to keep going, and I'll share the results with you. Let me share them with the audience.
Great.
Well, okay. Cool. So now the audience can see this, but you guys can't. But I will read it to you. So 47% said yes, this looks very promising. And another 37% said possibly in 1 or 2 places. So you've got, over 80% interest in, they are excited about it.
Wow.
Right?
Good.
So pretty exciting stuff there. All right, let's keep going.
It is.
Let Susanna talk about the aspects. And then we want to save time for questions too.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So Roger, thanks for that. And Susanna, back to you for internal competencies.
Okay. Well, thank you for all of that explanation then, David. That's really, and I'm super excited by how many people are bullish on this and how many people think there's opportunity. Because this really is a lot of, what we're teaching here, product-led growth is a new term. It's pretty new. But if you dig beneath the surface, a lot of the things that you're talking about, that I'm talking about, are best practices that have been evolving for a while in digital businesses. And really, things that, so many of the great SaaS companies have been doing for a while. And now we're kind of taking it to the next level with product-led growth. So let's talk about those essential organizational competencies. A lot of the time, it's really easy for us to sit here and sort of say, okay, these are all the best practices. But what really has to be activated or has to work well is how things are working or hitting in our organization. We have to have that level of buy-in. We have to have changes to our organization that are going to support this. And so we're not going to sugarcoat it and say it's overnight or easy, but I am going to point out 3 essential areas of competency and selected actions in each area, the way that things actually need to be different and can be different in corporate strategy, in the way that you design your organization, and then in the way that you handle data and build data infrastructure and tooling. So let's start with that highest level, that corporate strategy, which hopefully is not happening in a fishbowl at your company. I know you always love the cartoons, I find. So
better than an echo.
It's an easy strategy to follow.
Right.
Sure. Yes, it's just around. Exactly. Well, that's the flywheel, right? Okay. So vision and roadmap are PLG aligned. That's a short bullet for actually a pretty complex topic, which it's pretty tricky if you're used to making investments that pay off immediately in sales, to think about making investments in a product that you might be offering some or all of for free. So there's definitely kind of a mind shift, and you really have to have that commitment. And it might be for, a quarter, it might be for several quarters that you're really committed at the beginning to saying, I'm going to invest in this thing, and it's going to be all about the user. I'm not going to be thinking right this minute about somebody purchasing this. I'm going to think about optimizing my roadmap, optimizing this part of my product or this entire product for the user. So you got to be aligned to the top level. Your board has to be patient and accepting of it. It can't be something that a product manager unilaterally goes off and decides. So So it's really important to kind of have that realization and to understand how the investment today in something that isn't, immediately it's not immediately, okay, this month we put roadmap together, next month we hit this forecast, but have the vision to look a year out and say, this is how we're seeding growth today over the long term. Now, UX as your North Star. If you're lucky enough to work for like a world-class consumer company, that's in your DNA and you got that covered, right? For a lot of business-to-business companies and sales-driven cultures, companies that we know and we've worked with, they are not investing yet very heavily in user experience. And this is a relatively new concept for them. And so we have to do this kind of a mind shift and a strategic shift to not undervalue user experience. It's not something that we just hired a contractor for this project. It's something that you really embed in your day-to-day, because you can't focus on optimizing for that user without really having user experience embedded in your organization, throughout your organization, and really that user experience as the goal, right, to create an excellent one. Having a culture of data and experimentation, that's tough too. That's a tough mindset shift. A lot of us who've gone through agile transformations are sort of trying to bring agile to existing organizations. That can be tough, right? And the idea that we're not planning up front everything, that because the truth of the matter is that growth and this idea of having something optimized for users, you're not going to get it right on the first try. I don't think there's a company out there that's like, okay, I planned it, I put it out there, it was all correct, and we grew, right? It's always something that you're going to be looking to improve. You're going to say, how do we get 1% more? How do we get it better? And the way to do that is iterative. It's by making small changes and doing them iteratively, and then learning from the experimentation. So that's, we'll talk about infrastructure in a minute too, but that's definitely a mind shift from all of the upfront planning to being more agile and nimble. Execs tracking PLG oriented KPIs, so not just revenue, not just these high level kind of business KPIs, but also looking at free usage, at active users and DAU over MAU, churn, things that they might not be so used to seeing or so invested in. You really want to see that growth in users, and not just at the beginning, at least, not just how this is affecting your profit and your bottom line. And then enterprise strategy does coexist, and we'll actually address that when we talk about the organization, that enterprise coexists a lot, but you have to make sure that it doesn't distract. So a lot of the great product-led companies, they absolutely have an enterprise sales force, they have enterprise products, they do work with enterprises, absolutely, but they still are really, really focused on users. And again, just like UX, there's that mind shift, because we're used to selling to the buyer in enterprise, and the users get kind of pulled along. And that's not happening here, but it doesn't mean that we can't still address the concerns of the buyers even at that corporate level.
In fact, another great summary description of product-led growth is that it is the era of the end user.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. All right, so org design changes are really tough, right? We all know that. We've been through enough reorgs in our careers to know that org design is tough and reorgs are tough. And by putting product at the center, you're asking people to change in some ways the way they work. And here's like a few examples of how the different silos in your organization may actually need to change. So, sales is certainly the tip of the spear here. And this is where I think some of the biggest impact happens between the way that they used to get and pursue leads to this new kind of product-led way. I think that sales, one of the biggest fears, so their orientation, of course, is to want customers to purchase before using. So you got to buy before you get value. That's why they're there, right? And I think the biggest fear, one of them, is cannibalization, that if we're going to offer free benefits, if we're going to go out to market with something that users aren't paying for, that sales isn't getting compensated for, that we're going to cannibalize, we're not going to be able to sell. And so there's really that mind shift again around those PQLs. And sales really has to kind of viscerally understand how good leads are when you walk into a company and you've got those thousands of users. Those are the best possible pre-qualified leads. And as long as we're committed to having things on top of our free product, things that the company can purchase as well, that sales can sell, they can see that this can potentially improve their hit rate and keep them from chasing a lot of leads that are a lot of work to close. So it can be really beneficial for sales, but it can be a bit of a sales job to sales, I think, to get them on board. Same with customer success, right? They're oftentimes today focused on onboarding, right? Like, how many customers did you onboard? How many implementations? And we need to kind of change the mindset to how do we enable users to self-serve? How do we enable them to onboard themselves? And, you know, maybe change the way that we're rewarding sales and CS alike for being product led and for focusing on how do we get improvements to be in the product and get things to be more self-serving versus activities that we're doing in addition. Then, of course, you know, integrated UX for sure. You know, we mentioned this, but users aren't captive, even in B2B sales. Thinking about the user coming first. So designers are actually rewarded and they're held in sort of higher positions at product-led companies as well. And then finally, product marketing, you know, and the marketing team in general, looking at how can we use our product as our top lead magnet. Doesn't mean we don't produce other content,
Right.
but it means that we're looking at product first. Okay. And then finally, of course, you know, data and data science. Product-led companies are really measuring usage of the product. We're using that to inform how we improve the product, where we draw those cut lines, so what we charge for and where that breaking point is, and also, you know, who we sell to and how. All right, so we talked about enterprise sales and whether they're relevant or not in product-led companies. And again, I want to attest, super important to a lot of product-led organizations. I don't know if you've had the experience of looking at a lot of pricing pages, but they have an enterprise product, and when it says contact us, right? Call us for pricing. That's where enterprise sales and that enterprise team really can come in and add a ton of value. And there's several reasons for that. Why is this still so relevant? Well, even though there's a lot of self-serving and a lot of companies want to do that themselves, you still have opportunity for customized deals. So if I'm Walmart, you know, if I'm the biggest of the big, like I still want what I want, right? I want my own pricing deal. I may want, you know, integrations. I may want additional services. I may want some support level that we don't normally offer. So like there's a ton of customization possible. C-suite buyers in many industries, they still expect it. They want that personalized service. You still need a personal touch for a lot of deals and a lot of opportunities. And then for enterprise sales themselves, also, look, there's still opportunity in these kinds of sales for additional services. There are other things to sell that aren't just standardized product. So there are other things that we can do to make ourselves more profitable. That doesn't go away because we're product led.
Right. So Susanna, I think we've got quite a few questions. And so
okay, well,
I'll be able to move to the summary pretty quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
just real quick to touch on data, real important data and experimentation. It's going to take investment in infrastructure and staff and potentially new technology to both measure things better, track them better, and to do experimentation in your product as well. All right, now we can move to the summary.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so what did we learn today? Well, we learned that product-led growth is a model that uses your product and your users as your mechanism for growth. We heard that, I think we've repeated it a dozen times. We learned about performance too, that product-led companies outperform sales-led companies, certainly when they go public, right? After that first sort of bit, they definitely start to, once they invest in growth, it pays off. And your company, right, even if you're enterprise and sales driven today, can adopt some of these best practices and become more product led. I'm going to hand that back to David now to talk about the next steps.
Thanks, Susanna. So there's a couple of things you can do right now. First off, for anybody who registered today, you'll have a follow-up email, which will include our own product-led growth maturity assessment. So this will cover a lot of the areas that Susanna and I went through, and several others we couldn't today due to limited time, and it will allow you to kind of really benchmark yourself. So invest some time in that, do it with your colleagues, and you'll probably identify some things you can do right away, which won't take a lot of work, which would have a lot of impact. The other thing is, as Susanna really hit on, is you really have to huddle with your sales and marketing team, support and services, et cetera. Some of them will really embrace this. Some of them will be really threatened by it. Everybody's opinion is valid. You want to understand what those barriers are so you can overcome them. And, you know, focus on the what's in it for me, the with them, so to speak, or the what happens to me. And you can really find great plays for your sales and marketing team to reallocate some of their resources in ways that are great value add, and don't diminish their roles, but just allow them to do things maybe in a different way.
Absolutely.
You can pick a place to start. There's so many places we identified. Maybe it's on your website. Maybe it's figuring out what to give away free and what to charge for. Maybe it's improving your onboarding, as we covered a couple of months ago. So you don't have to do everything in order to accomplish something. So get started right away, because time's a ticking and your competitors are doing this. And so it's a great thing. We're not moving as an industry fast enough yet on. Identify what your metrics are. If you're not a big fan of the pirate metrics, we love them. They're very pervasive, but find your own. But remember, what gets measured gets done. So measure and you'll know where you have to improve. And last but not least, an unapologetic plug for our class that we pulled a lot of these material from as excerpts. I think Roger's going to have a very special deal for you in just a minute, but those are some things you can do right now to move ahead and really take action here.
And there it is. So we are offering a special discount code today for access to the online digital product management course. You can enter this PLG250 discount code in the checkout screen when you get to you found the time that you want to take this live course online, and then you're checking out. That's when you can enter this code. It will give you $250 off the course. The code will be effective through Sunday morning, so you've got a couple of days, but not a lot of time. And you can only buy one seat for yourself, but you can share the code with others. So I do encourage you to share the code with colleagues. Bring a friend, if you will. And I would love to then spend a few moments answering questions.
Yeah.
There's
and
the gift.
Is the assessment that we mentioned before. This will come to you just because you showed up today.
Yay.
All right.
So let me combine a couple of questions here. Oh yeah, I've got a poll here. I'm going to launch the poll briefly, but I will also start with our questions.
We'll talk fast.
I'm going to launch the poll, but while you're answering the poll, I'll also pose a question to our panelists. And I'm combining two questions. One question was from Harry. Can you think of any hardware company examples which are using these techniques or are using successful digital product management other than Tesla? And another question from Christopher was, can you talk about how PLG isn't specific to SaaS companies? So kind of similar question here, not just SaaS, and can you think of hardware companies as well?
Oh man, I can't use Tesla. Bummer. But anyway, yeah, there's a bunch.
You're obsessed with Tesla.
I know, I've kind of milked that one, huh?
Yeah.
I think another great example is in the home ecosystem now. Look at what Google has done by acquiring Nest. That whole ecosystem of devices. Those are all IoT, Internet of Things endpoints, which generate rivers of data. But more than that, they provide tremendous value, whether it's security value, comfort. That's another great example that's really pervasive and is probably a little more consumerish, but they sell a lot of hardware that support their services.
In my earlier webinar, at the beginning of the year, I did a webinar on trends for 2020, and I pointed out this digital transformation aspect. And so these techniques are being used by power tool companies, right? I don't remember the name now because it was back in January, but there's a power tool company that an app comes along with your power tool so that it will help you do scheduled maintenance, help you register for your product, help create an engagement connection. Even though it's a power tool that doesn't have any digital interface on it, you create a parallel digital experience by having that application that allows for interaction with your customer base.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of examples out there.
Yeah.
Mhm. Another one
We have
with
time
question. I think we're at 11 o'clock, so let's ask this one last question. Do you have examples on how to incentivize sales and customer support to want to participate?
Well, what we did at my last company is, I think Susanna hit on it, and just to be concise, I think there's value adds because you can bring them much higher qualified, product qualified leads, which make the conversion of, for example, free customers or middle tier customers and enterprise customers, much greater example. If I'm a salesperson, I want to close more deals. I need more qualified leads, and nothing is more qualified than a product qualified lead. So if I'm a salesperson, that's happy hunting for me.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much, David and Susanna, for your help today. This is a great topic, and we will follow up by sending out that free tool. I encourage our audience to sign up for our next webinar, which will be next week, and it's about getting hired, interviewing with a pro for a product manager job. And we've added in the seasoning of how do you do this completely remotely, since that's, of course, how we're doing these days, right? And I've linked the registration link into the chat box. So once again, thank you, David and Susanna. Thank all of you for spending your time with us today. We hope you found a lot of value out of this, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
See you next time.
everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.